Week 13 is in the books. That means it's time to hit those waiver wires to find players that could add value to the back end of your rosters. And quick note, I am going to be referencing rostership percentages in this video, and those are coming from roster data from 1,700 Dynasty leagues on myfantasyleague.com. Basically a 50-50 split of one quarterback in Superflex, all with a minimum of 20-man rosters. So I'm not pulling these guys out of nowhere, but it is possible that some or even all of these guys are already rostered in your leagues, but for the most part, there are hundreds of Dynasty leagues where these guys are available on waivers right now. First and foremost, I want to highlight a couple of players that are very highly rostered, but not exactly 100% rostered that I think need to be, and that includes Jameis Winston, quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, Michael Carter, running back for the Arizona Cardinals, Tutu Atwell, wide receiver for the LA Rams, Cedric Tillman, wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, and Tucker Kraft, tight end for the Green Bay Packers. Again, all these guys are rostered in over 95% of Dynasty leagues out there, but not exactly 100%. So double check your waiver wires and immediately add these guys if they are available. All right, first on the list today is a surprisingly good performance from Joe Flacco. 250 yards, 2 touchdowns in his first start for the Browns, basically off of the couch and without Amari Cooper for half the game. I know that there's risk with adding Flacco because the Browns could just go right back to Dorian Thompson-Robinson if he's healthy next week, but I actually think that Flacco is a better quarterback right now as the Cleveland Browns continue to fight for a playoff spot in the AFC. And I mean, for fantasy football, the next 3 matchups for Cleveland are Jacksonville, Chicago, and Houston, all currently bottom 12 in points allowed to opposing quarterbacks. And with more bye weeks this week for Kyler Murray and Sam Howell, plus all the other injuries and replacements to quarterbacks that we've had over the past couple of weeks, you may just need Joe Flacco to keep your playoff and championship hopes alive. So definitely add him if he's on waivers. But in actual quarterback injury news this week, Kenny Pickett left early with a leg injury and was seen in a boot after the game. So the Steelers now have to turn to Mitchell Trubisky to possibly finish out the season. Trubisky, though, wasn't that bad against Arizona statistically. He had 117 yards and a touchdown in only one half of play, which basically matches what Joe Flacco did had Trubisky just played an entire game. By no means is Trubisky, though, the worst quarterback that I've recommended adding this year, and by no means would he be the worst quarterback that you'd be forced to start this year either in fantasy football. Anybody else out there have to play Tim Boyle this week, or is it just me? So because Mitch Trubisky is an okay quarterback with solid weapons, he needs to be added in Superflex leagues. And at the very least, you just add him and then flip him for a 3rd or even a 4th round rookie pick. And lastly, I feel like I have to talk about Trevor Siemian since he replaced Tim Boyle after 3 quarters and now could be the new starter in New York. Look, Trevor Siemian is not a good quarterback either. None of these quarterbacks for the Jets have been good since Aaron Rodgers got hurt. And I desperately hope that you don't have to actually play him if he is the starter. But if you think that you could get him for free off of waivers and then flip him for any 4th round pick, basically from now until 2030, essentially, then I do think it's worth it if you can flip him for a pick. Moving to the running back position now, the Commanders' backfield just cannot stay healthy. This time it's Bryant Robinson going down with a hamstring injury. Antonio Gibson is technically the next man up, especially in passing game scripts. He is the passing downs back for the Commanders. But Chris Rodriguez is also going to be involved as the grinder back in this offense with Bryant Robinson out. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked to see Chris Rodriguez just fill in for the Brian Robinson role and the Commanders just leave Gibson's role as is. And if that's the case, Rodriguez is a much more interesting pickup now, considering the season that Brian Robinson has had up to this point. Washington does have a bye week this week, so it is possible that Brian Robinson takes the week off and then returns healthy the following week. But their 3 games after that are against the Rams, Jets, and 49ers in the fantasy playoffs. The Rams and Niners are pretty bad matchups, but the Jets came into this week 28th against opposing running backs. So if Brian Robinson is out for 3 weeks from now, he could be a sneaky start in a positive game script, or at the very least, you add Chris Rodriguez, and if news comes out that Brian Robinson is done for the year, you can trade him for draft picks as his value rises up, just like any other handcuff that gains value when the starter goes down. But speaking of handcuffs that could gain value, Dearness Johnson has quietly seen a massive increase in usage behind Travis Etienne recently. He actually overtaking Take Bigsby for the RB2 role in Jacksonville. If he is still on your waiver wire, he needs to be added immediately given the role that he would have if Travis Etienne were to miss any time at all to end the season, which that likelihood honestly has increased given his rib injury he's been dealing with coming into this week. And as I'm recording this and actually editing it on Sunday, you guys could have different information than I do right now. Etienne could have gotten hurt on Monday night. So depending on what happens on Monday night, we could have very different information, and Dearness Johnson would then definitely need to be a massive add. But even if Etienne remains healthy after Monday Night Football, Johnson is still very much worth an add immediately as the immediate handcuff to Travis Etienne in this Jaguars offense. Moving over to the wide receiver position, I wanted to highlight Noah Brown, who's seen a dip in rostership percentage recently after being relegated back to wide receiver 3 or even wide receiver 4 duties on the Texans offense with the return of Nico Collins and Robert Woods. But now he needs to be added again because Tank Dell is out for the year with a broken leg, and we just continue to not be able to have nice things in fantasy football. I don't think I really need to go into much explanation as to why Noah Brown should be picked back up given his performances a few weeks ago without Nico Collins, but I just wanted to make sure to add him to this list to make sure that you guys check your waiver wire in case he was recently dropped. He needs to be added back up if that was the case. Another wide receiver to highlight is Greg Dortch, who has very sneakily seen 20 targets over his last 3 games with 2 double-digit weeks for fantasy in that time frame. Now, he only had 3 targets this week against Pittsburgh, but to his credit, that was second on the team behind Trey McBride with 3 total targets, so we can't totally ignore that. But the main reason for Dortch's recent target numbers have been the ongoing injury issues with Marquise Brown, who actually left the game earlier this week after re-aggravating the foot injury that he was dealing with coming into the week. So if Hollywood actually sits to get healthy, Michael Wilson continues to miss time with his injuries, Greg Dortch actually becomes the wide receiver 1B in this offense with Rondale Moore, which is usually a pretty solid role to have. And if he can return to getting 8 to 9 targets a week, then he could actually be one of those guys that goes straight from your waiver wire to your starting lineup if you actually need him. And the last receiver that I wanted to discuss is Demarcus Robinson, whose role also increased Sunday because of the injury to Puka Nacua, because everybody say it with me, we can't have nice things in fantasy football. I did mention adding Tutu Atwell at the top of this video, and he also is a good add too if he is still available, but he is rostered in way more dynasty leagues than Demarcus Robinson is. But Robinson outproduced Tutu Atwell this week with 55 yards and a touchdown on 4 receptions and saw 3 more targets than Tutu Atwell. But that could have just been a 1-week thing. I don't really know. I will also add, though, that Tyler Higbee also left the game early with a hand injury. So if he and Puka are both out, that opens up the target share in this Rams offense to allow both Tutu Atwell and Demarcus Robinson opportunities to be relevant. But since Robinson is available in way more leagues right now, he is your best bet to find on waiver wires. And finally, I wanted to mention Harrison Bryant, who actually outproduced David Njoku this week with Joe Flacco at the helm. Bryant saw 1 fewer target than David Njoku, but caught all 5 of them for 49 yards and a touchdown. Now, some of you might just view this as fluky 1-week production, but I actually don't see it that way. With Amari Cooper out, the Browns will probably opt for more 12 personnel sets with both David Njoku and Harrison Bryant on the field together to make up for their lack of firepower at receiver, plus just have more blockers to be more efficient on the ground too. So if Bryant sees more snaps and has an increased opportunity for targets with Amari Cooper out, plus Flacco's affinity for the tight end position, Bryant could have back end tight end 1 appeal for fantasy as a PPR option plus a red zone option in the Browns offense. And since we're talking dynasty, Bryant is actually a sneaky stash for the 2024 offseason as he is a free agent in the spring. He could sign somewhere else to be the starter next year and see a major increase in value. Don't forget, Harrison Bryant was once a very coveted tight end stash coming out of college in 2020. He's 6'5", 250 pounds, ran a 4.7 40, and had a ton of production in college with over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns in his final season in 2019. If you can pick up Harrison Bryant right now, he not only could be a solid starting option to end the year, but he could also be a huge offseason winner if he hits big in free agency and finds himself a fantastic role on a new team. So definitely be adding Harrison Bryant if he is available. But if you're a Dynasty football player and you are not subscribed to this channel, please do so as we continue to drop Dynasty specific content all season long. And we are going to be starting to look at this 2024 class for rookies as we get into the 2024 offseason. But if you haven't watched it yet, I posted a video talking through my favorite end of season buys for a playoff push, which you guys can check that video out right up here.